Yo guys, what's good? Ass here once again with another Exos Heroes video. Today, it's a light and dark day, so you know what that means. We're going to take on all the special dungeons with legendaries only. So let's get into it. Alright, let's go over our heroes. We will start with the heroes we need to take with us. So, we have Kaya and Xeon. Let me quickly pull them up. Here, Kaya. We talked about her a lot, so I don't go over her too much. Here's her gear. Here are her stats. You guys all have a Xeon. So here's his gear. And here's his stats. So nothing too special. It's just a standard progression that you go on through the game. Next up, we have Deva and Rhesus. So Deva, another hero that we talked on extensively. Here her gear, here her stats. And then we have Rhesus. She has no gear and she has weak stats. So she's a decent poisoner, 1 mana poison and a 4 mana poison. However, this doesn't help us at all in the dungeon, so I just kept her low and deal with where she is required with all the other heroes. Don't bother building her up, it's not worth your time. So Nika, Leafy and Sybil are the next on our list. So we have these three. Sybil, you know, like I use her really frequently. And she is really good with the 0 mana heal that she can constantly provide, and she can break a lot of enemies. She is really easy to get because she's on the lower tier of rarity. So you can get her to 5 times enhancement, transcendent super quickly. These are her stats. And yeah, she's a reviver healer. Weak on the heal. So it's not really a lot. Weak on the revive, but it's a burst, and burst heals a little bit more. So if you get to 5 mana, which you might actually be able to do because her heal doesn't cost mana, it's pretty okay. Let's continue the list. Leafy. Leafy is pretty good. You also get her for free, so I put some gear on her. I actually don't have another piece. These are her stats, and the Drill Milky Way is pretty nice. I think all AoE damage over time is pretty good for dungeons, and she has a decent hit. Like this is around a 300% hit, so nothing too special, and her stats are not good enough that you would use her as your main damage dealer. But all in all, she's okay. And then we have, where is this girl? Nika. There she is. So Nika, she has thrust, she has punching pipe, both stun abilities, which come in pretty handy. The Gatling Barrage you will not use because she's used in the Ancient Gold Mine. You will never use it just because you will kill yourself. But the punishing pipe and thrust are really good on her. So the other heroes that we were using were Luke and Vinity. So let's start off with Luke. He has no gear because I had to strip him yesterday, but nonetheless I think he is worth your investment. He's actually pretty good. So because of that, I don't need to show you the stats. He has block, which provokes and gives him heal over time. He has his burning hammer, which you barely use, and shield of loyalty, which you use all the freaking time. It's pretty good, not on Degas level, but even in combination with another unit like this, he can be good. So, and because of that, I actually took him into another dungeon as well, where he wasn't required at all. So here we have Vinity. he has no gear, and he sucks. Like, this is a really bad ability. This is okay, but too mana intensive. He's not good at all. So now we can get into the better units. Oh, we stay actually here. Astarte, you all know like how much I love her. She's probably my favorite hero in the game. Design wise, she has like this insane burst ability, and overall I like her kit, I like her stats. So my stats never change because I don't ever upgrade any pieces of gear, which you trust me, you should do that, but I'm investing in a lot of other things. She has counter 2, pretty awesome. Spinning attack, 420 multiplier, really good. And reckless scratching is just insane. Like, really insane. For her, I'm actually on my way to unleash her potential just because how good she is. This is what she's currently at, and once I get my points in, I will bump this up to counter 3 to give her more mana gain abilities and just make her a beast. Okay, so Orgi, he's a good damage over time dealer. He has basically no gear. This is pretty good, and this is okay. It's a 500% multiplier roughly, and he will be used on Fire Day mostly. In the dungeon he's used, he is also pretty good because it's the only dungeon that doesn't require any light or dark breaks but fire and metal, so he's actually quite okay in that one. Lastly, we have Zephyr and Hoenn, and these are here. So let's start off with Hoenn. No gear. I think he sucks. He has too high mana cost for what he does, and he's completely useless because none of the units are nature units, so he's just a kind of yeah, chain on your foot. Actually, same with Zephyr. No gear. Both of them are just units that are thrown in to make your life harder. Don't bother with them. Like, this is... maybe this is okay. This is too high mana cost for a dark unit. Like, in general, dark units, if the abilities are not low cost, then it sucks, because he can barely use this ability. And yeah, if you use this ability, he cannot use his other one. So both very weak. With that all said, let's jump into the dungeons. So we start off with the experience dungeon, which is really easy. So for this, I will take time to talk about some of the options you have here. I took Fierce, Wilkes and Metron just to show that it kinda doesn't matter as long as you have the right elements. You could have brought Sybil, Nurmish, Sanando, or any of the good units from Light and Dark. Unfortunately, there aren't too many. So having Kaya and Xeon here actually provides you with a good amount of survivability and damage. The units that I picked are mainly there for, yeah, breaking the enemies, and then a lot of the damage comes from Xeon itself, which is pretty good in my opinion. If you have another good damage dealer in the light or dark faction, bring them. Maybe Nurmish, that would be good. Adams would be good here. I just wanted to play around with different units in order to provide you with a large roster of abilities. Metron can be a little bit funky here because of the reflect. if you don't know, if a unit gets hit with reflect and they have the right element, they can break the stones, which is pretty good. So in general, if you have in the back row a couple of like light units, so in this case maybe putting Xeon in the front and then Fierce in the back, could provide you with a little bit more breakage ability than what I was showing here. But yeah, as you can see, we go fairly quickly through. We face against Derridon, who I featured in a video in the past. Unfortunately, he turned out to be kind of a dud. He doesn't do anything special in terms of usability for your team. However, yeah, it's super easy to go through there. Once you have them all broken, there he evaded, then you can just continue using this exact method. I'm not sure that this team would be strong enough to auto it, like even though they're good, just because the AI can be funky and not use Wilke's AoE ability, so you might have some troubles here. At some point, I think once I got the left and right unit down, I actually decided to just put it on auto and let it run through, because it's just a time sink. It's not strategically difficult. Like there are some others where you actually need to think about what you're doing. This one is just get it out. If you bring Wilkes or any dot ability, you want to remove the left unit first, this healer, because she will constantly cleanse it and thus make your run longer, and I did it too late. So I should have just nuked her down immediately and then could have profited a little bit more from the damage over time that both Methrin and Wilkes provide. So all in all, I think you will be super good and have a really easy time on going through that dungeon at all. With that, let's go to the Spirit dungeon. Spirit is where I wanted to show off an example. This is a dungeon where you definitely can make your life harder than it needs to be if you don't bring enough breakers. I still cleared it, but it was very annoying. Minea had the wrong stone and was broken for a large portion of the fight, and even if she wasn't, her mana costs are too high, so it's difficult to get anything going. Liffy or Wilkes would have been so much better. Fierce alone is not enough to break in an efficient manner. Like instead of breaking Lepin, Sybil or maybe another damage dealer would have been so much better in order of efficiency. But yeah, I just want to go through and show you that even with suboptimal units you can do it, but it shouldn't be like on your mind at all times. As you can see, Deva is a good damage dealer here, and if it wasn't Deva but another dud unit, you would have a really hard time here, because Resist just does nothing, and basically the only reason I cleared this out is because I have good enough gear on my units, and yeah, because of that. So don't bring Minea, bring Liffy, Wilkes, even another single target damage dealer like Nurmish or Adams would have been so good for this one. Alright, so this takes super long, so I will just speed this up to like triple the speed and we will get through this. I will see you once we're done with that. Okay, so now we're actually at the ancient gold mine, and if you have seen the video about the metal dungeon, this one can be a little bit tricky, so you have to be really careful with what kind of abilities you use, especially because Nika and Sybil are force up on you. Liffy is not a problem at all. Liffy is pretty good in this dungeon, but with Sybil, you don't want to immediately go all out and use her AoE ability. If you don't have Ferris, but another single target light unit that would break, you would have a rough time if you would use Sybil's S1. So Ferris, you kind of have to bring her because she works really well in conjunction with Sybil. So Ferris, Sybil as a team work really nicely because you can always stun at least 2 targets and break them. In a regular scenario where you don't bring Ferris, but let's say Hawkeye or Frisia, you would basically one by one try to nuke them out like I did in the metal dungeon. But I didn't want to go through all that trouble, so Ferris is just the best choice, and you know it, like, it's really easy to get legendaries in this game, so do what you do and use the door to creation to get some Ferris. I don't know how hard she is to get, but you should get at least one pretty soon. So this is about like stage 1, right? So for stage 1, I broke until I started to get my mana going, and then I break them all over and over again while Nurmish does the work. Then stage 2 is really easy. And then for the boss stage, you really need to play this very well and make sure to attack with the right hero at the correct time. You will see me switching targets like a lot of times where I basically try to evade the stupid reflect shield. So I stun, I lost my Ferris here, which was pretty annoying because now I'm relying on my Sybil as the single light breaker, and there's 2 stones on the unit. And once the reflect is on, I basically have no chance to go in. So I really need to think, okay, can I hit the boss now? Can I hit it later? Now I decided to go for broke and basically get broken. Try to deal some damage because I know that my Sybil comes back around in time where I can break it. So now that it's broken, then you want to use all your firepower on it and yeah, leave the left and right targets as long as possible on the board. Just be aware that they have a metal stone, so they can break you there. Yeah, and from that point onwards, it's just keeping this guy CC'd and using all my nukes. Once you have him slightly under control the first time, if you manage your resources and your stuns very well, then this shouldn't be too much of an issue. It's still pretty RNG related, so you might get really unlucky that he puts on the reflect immediately and kills your units. Now we come to Solar. Solar is actually the easiest one of them, you might not believe it, just because it's non-reliant on any light or dark units. I just put in some strong units, not even caring about breaking, and yeah, a starter for the win. It's that simple. Corgi, he can break, but for me it was just, okay, bring in Colin, bring in Karin, and a starter, and they will manage. They will just clear house completely. So for this fight, there isn't really much to talk about. You simply nuke everything with a starter. her being the mandatory hero here is basically a free win ticket of saying, yeah, if you have built her up, you will have an easy time here. Colin has the wrong stone, so he gets broken from time to time. He has a fire stone, so it can be a little bit dangerous. You might lose him, but in general, Karin should be able to pick him up, and you shouldn't have any troubles going through this one. If anything, if you cannot clear the other ones, this one is the one you want to clear just because it's so easy. I know that eventually you want to clear out all of them, but if you are a beginner type player, you don't have the units, you don't have the time, then it's really important to manage your time resources and your other resources wisely and just go for the ones you can do in a good time and try for the ones that might be achievable for you. So for the longest time, Lunar was even hard for me with the Faded and Fade core that I'm using now, just because of the heavy RNG and how the whole thing is structured. There is not a lot of really strong light and dark units. We got some new ones with Ramji, and Dragonblood helps you out so much with Baelish, but if you are without them, then yeah, it's a tough. Light and dark is definitely tough, so I hope you see that it can be achieved even with only rares and legendaries, but you need to pick your battles, and this is one of the easier ones, so definitely pick this one. You can see we nuked the boss down, a starter just goes ham, and then you're golden. Okay, so now freaking Luna. Like, speaking about how good a starter is, trust me, this day is so annoying that in the end I decided to forgo everything I know and be like, okay, you don't want me to beat this with any regular methods, so I bring the big guns out, and so I did. I brought my Astarte, I brought Degas, I brought Luke, because Luke is pretty good. I used Lepin as well. Alright, Luke is mandatory here, I think. So I didn't bring Luke. Let me quickly check. Oh, here Astarte is mandatory. Sorry about that. So in Solar she is not, but I brought her anyways, and here she is mandatory. And I still decided for going everything, like not caring about any of the breaks. I'm just like, okay, I pick the Frost element for my tank and for my Reviver, because yeah, block rate is really high and you're constantly on a lot of mana. Then Luke, I mentioned, he is pretty good, and the share health is a really strong ability if you use it to your advantage. So constantly with Degas and with Luke, I'm sharing health. Everybody gets a heal, and every time they taunt, they get a heal over time too. So it evens out what kind of healing I have, and I do this constantly. Because they don't attack, I don't get any retaliations at all. So the only attacks that actually come through is when they attack, and then they get countered by a starter, and then I nuke them down with a starter. Vinity I use as a scapegoat, kind of, yeah, just attack whatever needs to be attacked, and then hit with the other units so they don't get countered or with thrust even stunned, because stuns can throw the whole game off. Even with this team, it's a challenge. If you make one mistake, if your Degas get stunned at the wrong time, if your Lepin gets stunned or broken, you will fail this. It's simple as that. This is probably the toughest out of any of the special difficulty dungeons. There's like none other that can even compete to that. So yeah, now when we're at the boss, you can see that even with this heavy nuking team, because we're not breaking them, we're solely reliant on Astarte's big burst damage. And you can see here she nukes everything down. However, she cannot nuke the boss in one go. And the boss here has a 700% multiplier, which based on his values is basically an insta-kill. If he does that, you will lose the unit. If he uses that on Lepin, you're out. If you don't have the revive, if you don't have the heal, you're dead. So one more thing, and this is fairly interesting. So my Degas actually has the green stone as a last stone, and my Luke has a green stone. So my Luke gets broken, and because of that he takes nature damage, and they take damage all the time, but because they share health, it's super distributed. You can see like they lose barely health, it's distributed between all of them, and my Astarte can actually survive because of that. And because they don't fall too low, it's actually pretty good. It's not advisable. In the optimal case, you want to have another stone on them. Maybe... what would be good? Like any stone is bad, like anything is bad in this case. So nature is probably the best because you're taking the least amount of damage. So yeah, this one was a hard one for me. Blessing, on the other hand, you just go with what is strong. Like this, don't bother with trying to be fancy or trying out new mechanics. Some of the units have final hit, and if they gank up onto your units, they're dead. It's really difficult. You need to keep the front row in control, the back row in control. You cannot allow them to hit because they hit freakingly hard. However, if you have Ferris, if you have Sybil, the back row is cleaned out. I used Liffey here, you could use Wilkes. It would do exactly the same. And then, yeah, I picked Liffey because she has a little bit more damage in her kit. But if you use her, you need to play more around the mana that she has, because she won't gain mana outside of her attacking. So what I do here is I try to make sure that she always has at least 2 mana when we go through the next stage to use her ability. And a lot of times, even when there's a target that I could kill, I might opt for not killing it in order to break it and gain the benefit of the dark mana stone. So the light mana stone I don't care too much about. Once they are broken, it's basically game over for them anyway. But the dark one is where you're very reliant on to keep your mana up at all times. Once you're through the second stage, it's kind of breezy. Yeah, here you could see that I left the target, and then in the end I killed it with Leafy, just because I wanted to get another attack in to have more mana to be able to burst something and be left on 2 mana again. I want to play this a little bit more efficiently. And now that you're here, again, the left person, she cleanses all the time, and you have 2 units, like most of the time, with a dot ability, and you want to have that damage because every single piece of passive damage that you can get is great, especially if you drive such a low damage team that I have. What I ended up doing here is, because I have so many debuffs, I simply decided, okay, let's overload the boss with debuffs, because cleanse can only remove 1 debuff at a time. And yeah, I basically just let the side units die with the debuffs on them, and then yeah, now it's going on to the boss and killing it. And that's already it. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if so, consider subscribing and leave a like on this video, share it with your friends. It helps me out a lot. This was honestly a tough one, and I'm glad that I don't have to do this again. If you have any questions regarding this, let me know in the comments and I will try to help you out. As always, it was a pleasure to have you here, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, enjoy the grind.